Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio, episode number 285. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are here this week to review and discuss The Monkey's Uncle. So we're doing something a little different for us this week. We focused in on The Monkey's Uncle because the Beach Boys, very young, appear in the film. We obviously know that later this week, May 24th at the time of this recording, the Beach Boys documentary is dropping on Disney+. In fact, I had the premiere last night at the Chinese Theater. So we wanted to talk about this film because they were in it. It was a natural tie-in. What's different for us, though, is that this is actually a sequel to a film called The Misadventures of Merlin Jones, a film that we haven't seen yet, but without spoiling too much, my friends, I think that this is one of those sequels that you can just pick up and watch without having seen its predecessor.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. I kind of feel like this was actually an earlier version of what they tried to do with the computer wore tennis shoes sort of universe that they ended up building out. Walt is having, traumatic flashbacks to those reviews.
The first film was good. At least I thought so. I liked the computer wore tennis shoes. The ones that came after leave a little bit to be desired, to say the least.
Well, to piggyback on what you said, we don't normally do sequels before we've seen the first film.
Right.
But honestly, I didn't know that until I started researching this, and we had already picked it.
Yeah.
But I had never even heard of the Misadventures of Merlin Jones. So I certainly don't think that this is a direct continuation or that we're really missing anything.
My big question from the beginning was, is there a tie-in between this and some of those other films that we had discussed, specifically Computer Wore Tennis Shoes? And was this sequel something that perhaps was even necessary? Which I know sounds weird considering we've never seen the original, but I think that you can watch this and sort of figure it out on your own, whether it was necessary or whether it was a cash grab. That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Fierce Fox Co., designers of handmade silkscreen shirts. Fierce Fox has a t-shirt, tank top, hoodie, or crew neck for every fandom. So whether it's the movies or theme parks, princesses or villains, the MCU or Star Wars, everyone will find something they love. The designs range from subtle quotes from our favorite films to iconic characters we can wear proudly in so many different styles, such as sketchbook and concert tees. Listeners of Monoreel Radio can get a 20% discount using the code Monoreel at checkout. Visit fiercefoxco.com to check out all of the collections.
Merlin Jones, a student at Midvale College, adopts Stanley, a chimpanzee, to give him a good home and teach him to work and think at a college level. Merlin devises a sleep learning machine that works for Stanley, so he knows it could potentially work for others. The Board of Regents, meanwhile, tries to curb the cheating happening at the school, particularly that of those playing on the football team. Mr. Dearborn, a board member who previously failed to make the team, proposes dissolving the football program to fix the problem, much to the dismay of Judge Holmesby, who fails to convince Haywood, a member of the Moo Moo fraternity, that studying harder will help the players. Holmesby, instead, insists on what he calls ethical cheating and convinces Haywood that Merlin may be able to help them. Maywood invites Merlin and his girlfriend Jennifer to an exclusive Moo Moo fraternity dance, but Merlin doesn't trust them. When Haywood explains that he wants Merlin to help the players cheat, Merlin pushes back and rejects their offer to join the Moo Moos, much to the disappointment of Jennifer, who wants to be a part of the quote-unquote in crowd. Merlin eventually convinces the Moo Moos and Holmesby to try the sleep learning technique on two players, Norman and Leon. He has Jennifer record the test materials and plays it as the two boys sleep. The next day, when Norm recites his answers in the lecture hall, it comes out in Jennifer's voice, infuriating their professor, who forces a 90% passing grade on the next exam. The players score 100% and remain eligible for football. However, both players and Merlin are failed when the Professor accuses them of cheating because Merlin was scratching his nose and Dearborn wants football abolished. So it's basically a witch hunt at this point. When the board questions the boys, Leon and Norman explain that they learned by sleep learning, which is not cheating as decided on by the board, saving the 3 students and the football program. The college, however, has fallen short on their fundraising campaign, so Dearborn finds a wealthy donor, J.P. Asterbilt, willing to donate $1 million on the condition that football is abolished, leading the board to consider the idea that the college can live without their football program. Darius Green III approaches Judge Holmesby and tells him the story of his grandfather, who failed to build a self-propelled flying machine despite his efforts, leading to his name being muddied by historians. He proposes a $10 million grant if Midvale College can see his grandfather's vision through and clear his name while saving the football program. Holmesby explains the situation to Merlin, who sets off to build the flying machine and selects Leon to be the test pilot. The reluctant Leon is convinced that he can fly through sleep learning, and while his first flight is a success, his landing is not, and he quits the program. Following the failed test, Merlin is prepared to give up as he believes that man isn't physically strong enough to operate a self-propelled flying machine. When Jennifer suggests making man stronger, Merlin intentionally scares her, causing her to punch him strongly in the face, proving his theory that under the right circumstances, adrenaline and super strength can be harnessed, so he develops drinkable strength and suggests that he fly the machine himself. His next test is a success, and when Green cuts Holmesby the check, he is taken away by doctors who are bringing him back to a mental institution. Dearborn arrives to learn that this is the same man as Mr. Asterbilt, and that there is in fact no money to be had for anybody.
I'm so ready to talk about this twist and this reveal, but we will hold it for the end. Let's obviously go back to the beginning, but I do want to do something a little bit differently here. Since this is not a musical proper, I want to talk about the song right away, because this is a huge scene to play under opening credits of all things. You know, Annette Funicello, she dropped the Funicello at this point. She is Annette. She is one word. So she's, you know, a pretty big star at this point. The Beach Boys are still sort of up and coming, I think.
They're
because
famous
they were
enough.
but they're not. It's kind of like to compare it to Taylor Swift during like Speak Now, how she was really big. She had a lot of hits. She had a lot of awards. But when you compare it to what she is now, it's the very beginning stages.
Well, it's her cameo in the Hannah Montana movie, right? Like,
Exactly. So I was surprised that, you know, and especially such a song that's so popular in the Disney canon was just up front, buried underneath opening credits. And the other thing that sort of blew my mind is that the Beach Boys are just tailor-made to sing Sherman Brothers. This was like the perfect marriage. I am shocked they didn't do more together. Because it's just so darn catchy. It sounded so great. And I was like, this is the famous Monkey's Uncle song. Like, this is just kind of where it is. It's not the climax of the film. It has nothing to really do with the film. The lyrics are setting up an entirely different movie. And it just completely caught me off guard.
It caught me off guard that we selected this because the Beach Boys are in it. And by the third minute of screen time, no more Beach Boys.
Right.
So it doesn't surprise me that they didn't record more with the Sherman Brothers, because Brian Wilson is a musical genius. And a lot of you youngsters who don't know who Brian Wilson is are going to sit this weekend because I told you so. And you're going to learn exactly who Brian Wilson was and why he's still relevant and important. I think that the movie or the song is like, on a very fundamental level, laid out in the lyrics of the song. And by fundamental, I mean Annette likes Tommy Kirk. And she wants a serious relationship with him, I think. We'll talk about that later. That's about as much plot as you get. What stood out to me more was that somebody on that set
Oof.
had to direct Mike Love. Poor Mike Love is so lost. Like, Al Jardine and Carl and Dennis and Brian Wilson, because they're playing their instruments, they can easily pantomime it. But because Mike Love doesn't play an instrument and he provides the fifth harmony, he's very awkwardly dancing, and he kind of looks like he doesn't know where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, the whole thing is super clunky, which it grieves me to say because this was directed by Robert Stevenson, who would have just done Mary Poppins the year before this, did Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and then we have this scene, which the poor editor couldn't even save because you've got Annette in front of the Beach Boys, Annette behind the Beach Boys, Annette sort of off on her own. It's a continuity nightmare, honestly.
And at one point, you had called it out to me, but you called it out to me as I was noticing it myself. Mike Love is mouthing Annette's lyrics.
I mean, in all fairness, when you shoot a scene like this, if you're running sound, you can't have the music. So essentially, all of these kids that are dancing, they're dancing to nothing. So kudos to the background extras, or foreground extras, I guess, in this case, because they're doing a great job. But for his timing, he's got to figure out when Annette is done delivering her line or done mouthing her words, in this case, lip syncing. So he's got to know where to come in. But it's like, again, the editor, like, why would you use that cut? I mean, if it's all you got, it's all you got. But the editor just didn't salvage what was already a train wreck. Sometimes you just can't fix it in post if it's not there in pre.
Yeah. Earworm, I mean, it's a fun song.
I still love the song. Like, I guess that's it. I really wish they would have carried the Beach Boys thread through, or even if you had them as members of the football team. Like, I really thought they were going to be more pivotal to this movie.
I get the feeling that they just needed them in that moment. They only wanted to pay them for the day. Just get them in so that they could put "And the Beach Boys" on the movie poster.
Probably. Well, that's it. That's the review. Let's go.
I mean, for what it's like, it kind of could be. It
Yeah.
kind of could be.
Well, let's talk about what it is. I will say this to start off, and without giving too much away, I don't feel like the entire film is a debacle. Where it sort of loses me is that, aside from the song, this first scene in the courtroom is setting up a conflict that doesn't really exist.
Yes.
Between the lyrics that Annette or Jennifer, her character, is singing that she loves the monkey's uncle and the monkey's uncle's ache for her. Yeah. I'm thinking that this is going to be like Absent-Minded Professor, where he's work obsessed and not focused enough on the relationship. And I mean, Absent-Minded Professor, I will die on the hill of she should have just left him, because he left her stranded 3 times at the altar. So I thought that was really going to be the conflict, especially because they double down on it once you get to the courtroom, and Merlin is asking for custody of his monkey Stanley. So they're setting up this idea that Stanley has been in his life. He's been living with him, but Merlin wants full custody as if he's a child, so that the monkey is protected against complaints from the neighbors or anybody trying to naysay him helping out with experiments. So I'm thinking this entire time it's going to be Jennifer complaining about the monkey taking precedence over the relationship. There's going to certainly be a neighbor that's spying on them and falls in a pool that's trying to report this to the cops, but the cops won't do anything about it because the monkey's protected. And that's not at all what we get.
Yeah, you're thinking, here comes $1 Million Duck, here comes Cat from Outer Space,
yes,
along with computer wore tennis shoes and absent-minded professor. We're just going to pull, and now some of those movies came out after this, but the general idea, because apparently every college is short on money, apparently. So like,
and every student has their own home.
Right. So, there are certain themes that seem to kind of weave throughout all of these Disney quote-unquote college films. And that's what you think this is going to be. And you think it's going to be, the monkey's going to trash the house. Here come the laughs. And then by like halfway through the movie, I go, where the hell's the monkey?
Oh, yeah.
She's not there.
Because they did lose that thread for quite a while. Yeah. I want to talk about, so instead of this, natural conflict coming from Merlin having to spend time with the monkey, I want to talk about what we actually get is that, Jennifer comes over, they're supposed to go out for date night. And he's like, no, I have to stay home with Merlin.
You mean with Stanley?
Or with Stanley, I'm sorry. Yeah. So this is what I was saying earlier, is that you're asking for custody. So he's been living with you.
Right.
And when Jennifer agreed to be a character witness, what exactly did she think was going to happen to date night?
Thank you. That's my first note.
More to the point, how have you had date night up to this point? Because you didn't just take him from the school to your home where you have this elaborate setup for him and a bed and all of Stanley's stuff. This didn't just happen. It would have been better if the court scene was written more towards, he's in this lab at school. I want to take him home with me. Can we get permission for that?
Yeah. Immediately wants a date night and grows frustrated that she can't have one. I mean, when I tell you this is 2 minutes after he gets custody on film, it's 2 minutes after he gets custody on film. It absolutely makes no sense. You could have just as easily had what they should have done. Instead of ditching the monkey for half the movie, or the chimpanzee as it were, they could have slowly had Tommy Kirk, Merlin Jones, do the Fred McMurray thing, where he becomes obsessed, he becomes distant, he becomes a shut-in because he's working on his experiments with Stanley to devise sleep learning that eventually pays off with the flying machine. Instead, you see him do the experiment once,
right?
It's a success, and now what? So they could have built a lot of story, and it would have served Jennifer very well, because instead you have your leading lady, who everybody is supposed to love because it's Annette Funicello, and she's dislikable within the first 5 minutes of the film.
The other thing that's very contradictory too is they've set up the idea that they have been cohabitating, not Jennifer and Merlin, Stanley. So, of course, because you have a chimpanzee cast in this film, you're going to want to see him do things. You're going to want to see things get a little wild. They've set up the idea that they've been living together, and Merlin turns his back for 2 seconds, and Stanley floods the bathroom while he's brushing his teeth because he was unattended and knocks the soap bubbles over. It's a great sight gag. It's really fun. But again, if you've had him in your house, why is this the first time that this is happening? And even more to the point too, if he can't handle brushing his teeth, you're going to trust him to do the sleep learning that's telling him to make your coffee the next morning.
Because
It's
they don't build to it. You don't see the failures to get to the success, which is where the comedy should be built into this.
Right. And I mean, I understand you want to go for these types of visuals. So to do that, you should have rewritten the foundation of he is just coming into the home and they're getting acclimated to each other. What I do really like that they did story-wise is that they've given the judge, who is very questionable as far as his ethics are concerned, personal stakes in the football team. And really, because we lose the Stanley thread so much, the judge is what keeps pushing this story forward. I'm curious, though, as to why they didn't make him more. I mean, he is sort of a mentor figure to Merlin, but why not make him the science teacher? Especially because then you would have had a really strong character that shows you can do both. He loved Midvale College because he had success on the football team. He was an athlete, but he was also brilliant, and he went on to become a science professor. So you can have him helping Merlin along and being an ally as far as, having Stanley in his life and, working with Stanley. But then you've still got that personal story with the football team because he genuinely cares as an alumnus.
Right. And there are parts of this film, what the movie does fairly well at points, not entirely from start to finish, but in points, the pacing's very good. Like, I'm sitting here saying we need more build up with the chimp. And I agree with that. But they don't waste time on useless backstory either. When the movie is well paced, it's very good. And they don't drag scenes out, and you don't get lost either. It doesn't necessarily feel rushed with certain characters and with certain plot points. You have, to your point, the judge. He's on the Board of Regents. He was a scientist, or a science teacher, I should say.
No, he was a football player.
Oh, that's right, he was a football player. What am I talking about? I'm misspeaking here.
Become, that's my argument.
Yes.
He could have become a science teacher.
That was a misspeak. He's a former football player. Yes, fine, makes sense. You have this ridiculous subplot where somebody wants football abolished at the school, and I don't care that this was the 1960s. No football program is going to dissolve because one member of the board doesn't want it. Because even by 1960s standards, $1 million grant is not going to supplement what a football program is going to bring in year after year. But I digress. It's a movie for kids. You're trying to make it funny. You're trying to give this ridiculous character a motivation.
You're trying to give a B-story conflict.
Correct. But the conflict makes sense. This guy is holding, and they say it later, you're the world champion of grudge holding, which was a very good line. They give him a personal grudge against the judge and against the football team. All of that makes sense. All of that is well paced. And I think that to get to that point at the end of the film would have made sense incorporating Merlin and Stanley and eventually the players. The problem is there's a moment where I think, oh man, this movie's flying. Well, that's because what you think the end point is going to be is 30 minutes into the film.
I'm glad that you bring that up because this movie distinctly feels like it is in two parts. When you get there, there is such an obvious shift when they start the second conflict, which we will talk about. One of the threads sort of holding it together is the fraternity. And in a way, they're puppets on a string to the board, but they are also the muscle that are going to get Merlin to ultimately carry out what the judge wants. So what was really surprising to me is the scene, how they set it up where Merlin's sort of naysaying what jerks they are, and they don't really say hello, and Jennifer echoes that they're stuck up and whatever, but that's really her way. It's a defense mechanism because she'd love to be a part of that. But Merlin is obviously not the type of student that's going to pledge a fraternity. So, this is sort of one of the many ways that she puts him down because she'd rather be with one of those guys. And all of a sudden, seemingly out of the blue, at least to Merlin, the head of the fraternity invites them to one of the dances. And it's really because they need Merlin to start working with the football players. Obviously, he doesn't know that at this point. So what I am getting to is that Merlin doesn't really want to go to the dance. Jennifer does. And she says, well, most dreams don't come true. And to hear those words out of Annette Funicello's mouth was shocking. I might have been less shocked if Snow White said it.
Yeah, this is a big point of contention with me when it comes to Jennifer. I said it before. You're a leading lady. You need to love your leading lady.
Yes.
Nobody loves Jennifer. Merlin doesn't. The audience does it.
She hasn't done enough to redeem herself yet. And spoiler alert, she's not going to in the next scene.
No, like, she's borderline awful to him. And the thing is, like, the Moo-Moos, their thing, and it was confusing because I thought Haywood at first was the captain of the football team, but he's not. He's the president of the fraternity. And his thing is, we have jocks that are the best. We've got politicians. We've got one scholar. It's always the smartest kid in school. We get one smart scholar to pledge the fraternity. And that's why they are encouraged to pursue Merlin. It's all self-serving to help the football team. It wasn't until the second viewing that I realized that he did not actually play on the football team. I thought he was a football player that was also in this fraternity, and that is not at all what he is.
Agreed. Yeah, because he's got such personal stakes in the football players passing, you would think that that's why. But I think this is just, look at my fraternity, look at the fraternity's resume. I do disagree with you, though. I think his pitch to Merlin by saying, you know, we've got football players, we've got politicians, he didn't want to pursue Merlin until he was told to. I think telling him that they select one scholar is part of the pitch, because he really doesn't want to take him, and he flip-flops on him so quickly throughout the course of this film, which, I mean, you don't expect anything less. He's not a deep character. You
right.
kind of know that that's going to happen.
Well, just to finish the point that I was making, Jennifer, all of them have a thing for Jennifer. All of the Moo-Moos kind of have a thing for Jennifer, right?
Mm-hmm.
If she wanted to be in that clique the whole time, and she likes Merlin because we were told that she does. But nothing that she does reflects that other than her being a character witness. So I don't understand why she's not off with the Moo-Moos already. Or why she doesn't just leave him to go to the Moo-Moos. Or why that's not a subplot where she leaves him to go date a Moo-Moo and now he's got to win her back and save the football program.
Or the monkey wins her back. That would have been a better conflict, because instead, this is what I was referring to before. In this next scene where they are going to the dance, she becomes probably like all-time low dislikable in this movie. No. This is the second most dislikable she becomes. She's all excited to go to the dance. I have a new dress, blah, blah, blah. She comes in, she twirls. Merlin doesn't even notice because he is giving Sheldon Cooper. All he cares about is academia. He is not paying attention to the dress.
And he does not want to be there, by the way. He does not want to go to this dance.
Right. But he does agree to have a babysitter at Jennifer's behest come over and watch Stanley. So he doesn't pay attention to Jennifer in her new dress, but he certainly pays attention to Lisa when she walks in. And this is just poor writing, early Hollywood misogyny, because you've got the polar opposite of Annette Funicello walk through the door. She's blonde, and that's what captures Merlin's attention. I mean, I wouldn't say that the actress that they cast was any better looking than Annette Funicello, where she should have been just cast aside like dirt. What they would have had to do was really sort of play up the idea that maybe Annette Funicello, like, not that I'm saying that you want to dull down the actress, but character-wise, they would have had to sort of downplay her beauty to create more of a contrast between Jennifer and Lisa.
Like Jennifer could have been more of a plain Jane.
Exactly. And then, Lisa walks through the door and Merlin starts fawning all over her because he's never interacted with somebody like this before. Instead, you've got two gorgeous actresses. So it really just speaks more to the casting and direction that you have a blonde, which is, what the beauty standard was, against a brunette, and you're making the brunette a plain Jane just by virtue of her being a brunette. And that's where this film feels very dated, and I find it problematic with this scene. But to get back to the characters, this is where Jennifer becomes more unlikable, because you orchestrated this entire thing so that you could go to your dance. You called the sitter, who, by the way, should have also known that she was coming over to sit a monkey, not a child. That would have been the nice thing to do. So you've both deceived her. But you did all of this, and now you're going to get mad. I assume that you knew who you were calling.
I have some issues with this.
So why now are you getting mad that she's captured Merlin's attention when this was all that you wanted? I mean, the whole thing is that it backfires on her.
And you kind of want it to, because she's not likable. But to the points you're making, it kind of falls flat. And the thing is this, is Annette Funicello, is Jennifer's character mistreated by Merlin at this point? Yes. Are you angry over it? Not really, because you don't like Jennifer. What it is more than anything else is uncomfortable. And I think it's supposed to play for laughs, and it doesn't. Part of that is, I think, to your point, casting, right? You don't make her that plain Jane. And the problem with that is, and you can ask my father, he's in his 70s. He grew up watching the original Mickey Mouse Club, and he would tell me as a kid, all the boys in school had a crush on Annette. Every boy in school did. And she grew up to be a beautiful woman, right? So you have her here. This was before she was doing the beach movies with Frankie Avalon. Mm-hmm. So she's obviously an A-lister. And when you put her on screen and she's not, there's no good way to say this. When you put her on the screen, you can't pretend that she's not the most attractive person in the room.
Right.
So I think they really did. They had to do what they did in Princess Diaries. Really is what they needed to do. And they didn't. That's problematic. My bigger problem, though, is in the writing. Did you not know who you hired?
Exactly.
You don't know what she looks like? You've never met her? How did you contact her?
How do you know that there are sitters and you don't know who exactly they are? Like, the school is not that huge.
Yeah.
And because she's also been posed as, this wannabe socialite wanting to be part of the fraternity, I don't buy from this character that you're not like a busybody who doesn't know who everyone in the school is.
And given the way that she presents herself, given the way that she speaks, given the way that she thinks, based on what we've seen so far, Jennifer comes off as the type that knows when she's not the prettiest girl in the room and would never have called this person. But how do you know the person? There's no social media. This was 1965, I believe.
5, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. This character would have known who everybody was. Unless you're calling somebody off campus, which you're not. You've said there are girls that babysit. You know them. You would have known who they were.
So, one more other thing before we move on. A very, very small population at Midvale College, which you and I, the first time we watched it, said, is this the same college that we've talked about in Absent-Minded Professor? Which still
has financial problems.
Yeah, which was Medfield College. You couldn't come up with again, poor writing. Medfield, Midvale, Medfield, Midfield. You couldn't come up with a different name. You couldn't call it Callahan College. You couldn't call it Palm Coast College. You couldn't
Sherman University.
Yeah, you couldn't. Pasadena University. Call it anything. Why is it almost the exact same name?
So sort of moving on
Kinda, sorta.
Because Jennifer's just going to get worse here. We get the football players that are going to do the sleep learning. And Merlin doesn't really want to be a part of this. He doesn't want to use his experiment for the football team's benefit yet. He really doesn't want anything to do with the fraternity, even though he likes their sandwiches. So Jennifer sort of uses her feminine wiles to get her way and, sort of builds him up. But this would have been so much more effective, and it would have redeemed her if she was the one to suggest the sleep learning. And it was coming from a place of support. And it was, hey, Merlin, you've been using this on Stanley. It's working. You've proven it worked. Why not take it to the next step? Why not use it on humans? And instead, she puts Merlin down by not supporting the work. And it doubles down on the idea of thinking that he's not good enough because she'd rather be dating one of these people in the Moo-Moos, which you can have now. So go get one.
Yeah. There's the other thing is when Merlin's character is called into question, forget the fact that he's oohing and eyeing over Lisa, which is supposed to play for comedy, but obviously we know it really doesn't work. He's still a high character person. He does not want to help them cheat. He wants them to learn because he takes so seriously academia. Mm-hmm. So you have this comedic moment that kind of flops for the character, but within 5 or 10 minutes, you're reminded why you love Merlin Jones. Because he has such a high standard. Because he's not going to compromise his character. And then you've got his opposite half. I can't call her the better half because she's not. The other half, who is supposed to build him up, and all she does is say, yeah, but this is what I want, so compromise your principles.
Exactly. And then she gives him a peck on the cheek, and it's, okay, I'll do it, which I want to put a pin in that because that's going to come back around later. So now naturally everything starts coming to a head. The bit where, because they're sleep learning, everything that Merlin has programmed to say, the football players are now spitting back on their tests. So it's actually a brilliant setup for them to get caught, that the three of them are spitting or are regurgitating the exact same material. Where it becomes a little bit too much is this cheating espionage within the college that they've got. You could have had him outside of the classroom window in the bushes with a long lens camera, and instead this man is like in the ceiling
with a camera and buzzers.
That's what I was going to say. The camera I will buy. The buzzers that the teacher has in the desk drawer to alert this man to cheating, and then to come in with the camera, you are just doing too much.
And none of them are Dearborn, by the way. These are other members of the Board of Regents that don't want the football program to be dissolved.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. But now you've got Merlin at a low point because he's been busted for cheating. They do this clearly for the sight gag to have Annette's voice coming through the football player. I mean, even that was a bit too much because what they were trying to prove with this experiment would have never caused that. But okay.
I thought it was funny.
It was, especially because you've got the most jacked player that they've cast speaking as Annette Funicello. So they get busted. You've got Merlin already at a low point because of that. And now Lisa, who's been babysitting Stanley seemingly just at night to cover date night. We don't know what's happening while he's in school all day.
Yeah.
Because obviously she's in class. She's not over there with Stanley, but we didn't write to cover any of that or see the house destroyed in any way while Merlin's not home. She wants to try the sleep learning. And instead of actually using the academia ones with the football player, he uses the domestic ones so that she'll make him a cup of coffee. And that's where he deserves what he gets, because Jennifer's going to come in and bust this whole situation wide open. But again, she does it in a way that's unlikable. He's just had a really rough day, and it's, oh, you needed me. You're all alone. Let's make this about me.
Yeah. It's a miss. It was strictly so that the point of the record would play where after the coffee is made, it's now go take your shower.
Right.
And it's Lisa. I think for what it is, like, the comedy of errors would have worked, but comedy needs to be funny for it to work, and a lot of the comedy in this does in times fall flat. There are times where the comedy is really good, and there are times where the comedy is horrific. And based on what I researched, they didn't change screenwriters. There weren't rewrites. So it just seems like you are watching two different films.
Right, because now we are at the shift that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Right,
because they're cleared, by the way. They find out that they weren't actually cheating because sleep learning is learning, not cheating.
Exactly. And that's where I actually turned to you at this point. And I actually thought I was going to end up loving this movie because I was like, I was really enjoying how it was making me think and how it became so much a question of ethics from the top to bottom, from the board to the teachers to the students. And I was like, this is great. And now we're just going to make a huge left turn because they call Merlin in and surprise him to tell him that he's cleared, but he has done nothing to earn it, nothing to try and put his life back together after this low point. But now we've got to shift focus to this flying machine. I didn't realize upon first viewing how brilliant it was setting up this anonymous benefactor. Because what seems like a throwaway line, they're going to deliver on tenfold. This is where you also get the line that you mentioned earlier, the world record of grudge holding. The judge has such punchy one-liners throughout this movie. We had a lot of laugh out loud moments.
Yeah, we did.
But now this is where it sort of goes off the rails. That's where you get this character, not to put the cart before the horse, two characters introduced. The anonymous benefactor, J.P. Astorbilt, which I love as a play on J.P. Morgan and Astor and Vanderbilt. I thought that was really funny. And then you get Darius Green, who comes in with his granddaddy's book, and he wants to avenge his granddaddy's name with the flying machine. And this is where you should know that this whole thing is utterly ridiculous. But the setup is actually pretty good here.
It's awesome.
And the book illustrations are so beautiful.
The whole thing now, and the brilliance of it is it's not until after you watch the film that you realize you should catch it early on. He's showing him an illustrated children's book, but he's talking about it as being absolute fact. You don't question it when you see it the first time because you're thinking that somebody took the folklore that was his grandfather's name,
right,
turned it into a story, made it into a book, and off it goes. It's like Johnny Appleseed. You don't think anything of it. The brilliance of an institutionalized human being took a children's book and convinced himself it was real and built an entire identity around it. It's so good. It's so good.
It is. No, and
it tricks all of us. We should all know this isn't real, and we all fall for it.
No, and the other thing, too, is that's where, as jarring as the shift in the film feels, it's also brilliant because now we're in the POV of the judge. We're not necessarily rooting for Merlin and Stanley anymore because we know that they're okay, problem solved, and we've introduced this new conflict of, they're going to take the football team away again, and we don't have any money. So now the judge, who we're sympathetic towards because he's been orchestrating everything, he's encouraged Merlin and Stanley and their relationship, and he's the one who, made sure that nothing bad happened to Merlin when he got busted. We're in your corner. We believe you. So now we want to see your precious football team succeed. Not realizing that we are getting duped right along with you. So now it's okay, call in Merlin. He's got to invent the machine again. And Jennifer wants him to do it and hurry up about it so that he can take her to a movie. This is the lowest of the low for our gal Jen.
And she married somebody that works for Boeing. So that joke was over the head of so many people. I hope that joke doesn't age terribly well. Just saying. Yeah, it makes no sense that you're inventing a flying machine. Essentially, is what you're doing. You can't do that in an hour. Like, that takes a copious amount of time and engineering, and we know Merlin can do it. Now, here's the other thing: the monkey's gone. The monkey's been gone.
No, he's here.
No. Just let me finish.
Oh, he's in the scene, but yeah, we lost him at this point.
He's not part of the movie. He's just there. So at this point, I start thinking, okay, now we're going to somehow turn Stanley into the test pilot, and the chimpanzee's going to fly it as a test, and then man will fly it. And boy, isn't this going to play for laughs for the kids. No, that is not at all what happens. We go back to the moo-moos, we go back to the football team, which, as Merlin explains, everything makes sense. I need somebody that's light, that has a lot of muscle. His mindset is all there. Everything he's saying makes sense.
And they spend so much time on it. That's the thing. So much time they should have held up a sign that said, hey guys, major plot point happening here.
Right. And so, okay, that makes sense. And then we'll talk about the end of the film shortly, but then you think, okay, here's another logical window for Stanley to come back, and he doesn't. Like, for as much good as they do, and they do a lot of good here, everything is sound and makes sense, but at the same time, it all falls apart.
Right. And this is where also, too, I have one more note on Jennifer before we move on, that, you know, forget even supporting Merlin in this endeavor. What about the moo-moos that you love so much? Why not, you know, if they put her on the side of ultimately, I want the football team, I'm rooting for the team and the fraternity to succeed. So even if you don't believe in Merlin, which you clearly don't because he's still not good enough for you, you could have had her at least feign support for him because she wants it for the bigger picture.
Yeah. Again, they're not doing her any favors here. Not in the slightest. And frankly, like, it's at this point that she should start having a character arc.
Yes.
It doesn't happen. Everybody else kind of seems to have a character arc, except her. And this is one of those instances where I start to wonder, upon first viewing, either she's going to turn or this relationship's going to be over. And it's just this bizarre status quo that makes no sense. And it just seems like there's a lot of conflict left on the table at this point.
I know that these were different times, and I feel like there was sort of a set of unwritten rules when you were courting someone. And I also understand that there's something to be said, you know, when you declare that you're going steady with somebody, from the female perspective, you are going to stand by your man. And that's fine if you are, you know, looking towards, okay, this is a good life partner, we're going to build a future together. But I just don't see, you know, forget that there's no spark or anything. I don't believe these two as a couple. I don't buy that there's chemistry. I don't even buy that they even genuinely care about each other. So it's already very hard to root for them because Jennifer has been so unlikable. But it's even harder now because I just don't buy them as a couple. Where we do start getting a little bit of a character arc, finally, is from Leon. It's sort of contradictory that he's not down for the cause to save the football team. And And I get that he's afraid to fly, and he quite literally draws the short straw to be the one to go up, even though, you know, this whole time it's being directed towards it's going to be Stanley. Especially, it would also be a really nice parallel to the earlier part of the film where you tested it on Stanley first and then you tested it on the football players. There's also, I'm realizing now as I'm saying it, an interesting social commentary that they're likening the dumb jocks to something that a chimpanzee can do. And what we're saying right now is probably not making that any better, but I digress.
I didn't write the movie.
So where they do sort of tie it back together is that now they're going to give Leon the confidence that he needs with the sleep learning. So instead of doing, you know, straight factoids, Jennifer lays down these words of encouragement so that he believes that he's going to fly. I like the initial instructional video that they show him of the early flying machines. I thought that was really cool. But this whole dream sequence where he's flying with the birds, I feel like we could have done without.
We could have done without it 110%.
I really think they did that just so Annette Funicello could sing again.
Yeah, a song about birds and flying. You get him in the first test flight, the only test flight for him. And he's flying, and everything's great. And he's singing the song, and he's doing well. And then it kind of dawns on him that he's flying, and he freaks out, and he crash lands. And that's on the heels of Merlin saying that, well, takeoff was the easy part. The flight I figured out, but I didn't figure out that landing. Just so that he would splash down in the mud.
Isn't this also sort of very contradictory to how effective sleep learning was for everyone in the first half of the film, but it wasn't enough to keep Leon airborne? That's supposed to be the lesson here, is that it worked well enough and he's good to go.
But how else is Jennifer supposed to ask the really smart, dumb questions?
God. Oh. I want to put a pin in that because I do have another note about her, and I'm not quite prepared for this headache. I want to ask you what they've built to at this point with this flying machine. This is sort of like a plane.
Yes.
When they're talking about man-powered flight, aren't you thinking something more in terms of like something that's going to look like a wingspan or like a modern day, like a hang glider? Because to me, this is just a plane that you're powering. Like, how is this any different than what the Wright brothers did?
Because this is self-propelled. It's not an engine.
Right. No, but I'm saying as far as the design of the actual plane itself, they're talking about, yes, it's man-powered. So that's a given that they're going to pedal it. But like the way that, especially because we've got this illustrated book, didn't you think it was going, and because they've spent so much time talking about supporting the weight of a human, didn't you think it was going to be more in the arms?
No, because
not something that they sit in?
No. Because it's physically impossible that someone could flap their arms and fly. And a hang glider, you're not actually flying.
Right,
you're just guiding it and
you're falling with style.
Yeah, exactly. You needed something that you not only controlled, but you were the engine. The human being needs to act as the engine.
Well, what do I know? I'm just asking dumb questions. Go ahead, proceed.
Jennifer asks... well, here's the thing. She asks what in theory is a dumb question, but you would never say it's a dumb question. When where he is ready to give up, Merlin's ready to give up, and he goes, man is just not strong enough to physically propel a plane, to physically fly. And she asks a question that you could categorize as a dumb question, where you go, why don't you just make man stronger? It's like, well, evolution has proved that we're as strong as we're going to get. So, like, in theory, is it a dumb question? Yeah, but you'd never look, because it's kind of a simple way of looking at it, and it's like, because it's not that's it. It's not that it's a dumb question; it's a simple question, and the answer is it's not as simple as that,
or an obvious question.
But they phrase it in a way where where they call it a dumb question,
right,
to her face, and she doesn't question it.
Nor does she question, after now Merlin has run out of ideas, Judge asks her to essentially do what she did earlier in the movie and use her feminine wiles to manipulate Merlin into pulling this off. Because now Darius Green has been wined and dined throughout this movie. He's ready to cut a check, and Judge is trying to keep him where he is because supposedly there's another college that he can go give his non-existent money to. Instead of Jennifer doing what she's been asked, she uses, in a way this is worse, because she uses reverse psychology on Merlin to get the job done. And she encourages him when she doesn't actually mean it. Because she was asked to, not just out of the goodness of her heart. And instead of, God forbid, having standards and saying, no, Judge, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the payoff works because he scares her into punching him in the face to prove that under duress, adrenaline and releasing sugar will not only make you strong, but it'll make you do things that you otherwise wouldn't do.
Right.
She would never just punch him in the face. So his theory is correct, and it's from there, it's, okay, let's figure out a way to harness this.
This is also a very explicit visual of fight or flight.
But it's the way that he says, you ask the smartest dumb questions.
Yeah.
That's the hard watch in this. I mean, is it a smart question to say, why don't you just make human beings stronger? It's not that simple. That's the thing. But you would never, even if you felt that way, I would never look at you and go, that's a stupid question to ask. You kind of like, you can think it, you can internalize it, but you would never say it and then make it a term of endearment.
Well, that's it, right? They're setting you up for the payoff with a term of endearment. But when you think about the modern day version of this and how much better it's written and how funny it is, think about The Big Bang Theory with Sheldon and Penny.
Yes.
There are ways to put a character down without completely knocking them out. There are ways to actually make a joke of it without truly making the person look or feel dumb. And when done right, this comedy is the best there is.
Yes.
Because we've seen it.
Now you see him test the serum on Stanley, and Stanley...
Animal testing, great. Let's add that to the list.
Destroys the whole lab, and that's where I think to myself, oh, great. Stanley's gonna fly the... No. No.
Right.
Merlin goes, I'll just do it. And so he does.
I mean, I do appreciate that. Like, nothing has been built to this moment, but I guess I do appreciate that there's at least a little bit of a character arc where Merlin's finally got to put his money where his mouth is.
But in all of that, he still never figured out how to land the thing.
Correct.
So we get him splashing down in the mud. And what saves this entire thing, honestly, I think what saves the entire movie is that incredible twist at the end.
Right, because it's like, where do we go from here? He's got a failed experiment. We know that the money is being threatened to go elsewhere to another college. And, you know, just by virtue of looking at the runtime of the film, it's like, okay, this is the ending.
Yes, because
what are we doing?
When she says to him, why don't you just make man stronger? We paused the movie coincidentally to take the dog out because he had to go outside. And when I saw the movie had 9 more minutes of runtime, I said, what are they going to accomplish in 9 minutes?
That's what I'm saying. I was like, we need a resolution and we need it now. And boy, do we get it.
But the twist, though. Can we talk about the twist? Oh,
so when that car rolls up, you think it's going to be Dearborn with his I told you so moment.
Right.
And you think that he's going to take the money for that college. And maybe that's where, at this point, you do get some sort of a resolution where all of the money was going to be, or, you know, where Midvale ends up with some of it, just being that we have 9 minutes left and you got to wrap it up in a bow somehow. So I can't even tell you what was like everything was going through my mind and nothing was going through my mind at the same time when I see these two guys in coats step out of this car. And I couldn't even form, my brain was just firing off like, are they really gonna? No, they can't. Is this a, no, it's not. Like, I just did not believe what I was seeing.
It was hysterical. And even better when Dearborn shows up and goes, where are they taking Mr. Asterbelt?
Just a blind side of an ending. And I mean, for as problematic as this movie is, and as much as I thought I was going to hate it because of all of the Jennifer stuff, I dare say it redeems it.
This is one of the funniest endings I've ever seen to a film ever.
Yeah.
That's not hyperbole. This is one of the funniest movies. This is one of the funniest film endings I've ever seen.
I'll do you one better. I haven't had this much of a shock since the end of Sixth Sense.
Wow. All right, you want to talk about our cast here?
Sure.
All right. Tommy Kirk plays Merlin Jones, Disney legend. I really liked him in the role. I like the character a lot.
So interesting story about this, though. After the first misadventures of Merlin Jones, there were some misadventures because Tommy Kirk was fired. They weren't going to do this sequel, and they brought him back.
Right. Because the movie, the original, made so much money. But I like the character. I thought he was fun. I thought Tommy Kirk played it very well. I thought that I bought him in the role.
I would agree with that. It's just what they set up as a great character. It leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth because of the dumb questions. That's the note that you're leaving him on. And because he really doesn't do anything to solve any of the problems.
Annette Funicello plays Jennifer.
She's great. I mean, the actress is great.
The actress is great. This is one of the worst characters we've ever talked about on this show.
They done her dirty.
I put her on Sharpay level insufferable.
Yeah, Jennifer is one of my least favorite characters in the Disney canon. It's just that it's so hard to not fall in love with Annette on screen. I mean, the character here made it easy, but it's just like when you think back to the opening sequence, she's just so darn charming singing with the Beach Boys.
Mm-hmm. We've got...
It's very polarizing.
Yeah. We have Mark Goddard as Haywood. I remember him from Lost in Space. He played Don West on Lost in Space. I wish that he would have had a bigger role in this because I like the character. I wish he would. I mean, he's manipulative enough without being dislikable, but I wish they would have played into that a little bit more.
I wish he was manipulative on his own terms and not just the mouthpiece.
Yeah.
And not such a flip-flopper.
Leon Ames plays Judge Holmesby. He's got the best dialogue in the movie.
Be still, my heart, meet me in St. Louis. That's where I know him from. He was so handsome when he was younger. He was just great in this. I really thought that he was going to be the meddlesome neighbor type, that he was going to be just like, what's his name from the Shaggy Dog? The neighbor. You did a killer impression of him. Oh, yeah,
Mr. Well, you're a nice person.
That guy.
He was Computer War. He was all of those movies.
Yeah, Strongest Man in the World.
Yeah.
I really thought that was going to be the character, and I was so pleasantly surprised that it wasn't. To me, he's actually probably my favorite character in the movie, and not just because I love the actor so much, but if there's one person that you can root for, it's him, because, you know, he is sympathetic in the beginning. He's not going to make this harsh ruling against Merlin and Stanley, and you feel bad for him because he got duped, same as you.
Frank Phelan plays Mr. Dearborn. The grudge against the football team, it's too much. Like, I understand that's the point of the entire character. Maybe they just didn't need to send it home so many times. We get it. It became too repetitive.
Or being that you did spend so much time with it, you know, instead of all of this nonsense and Jennifer and Merlin treating each other terribly. It would have been nicer to see a personal history between the judge and Dearborn. They allude to it because they were classmates, but you could have opened that up a lot more.
For sure. And then you have Arthur O'Connell plays Darius Green III / Asterbilt.
I misspoke. He's my favorite character in this movie.
He's so good. He's so good because he plays it so seriously. And they're like, look at how he dresses. Well, he's one of these millionaire eccentric types. He plays the character. It's so nuanced. He plays somewhere in between being mentally insane, but also being crazy eccentric. He strikes this balance, this in between that I don't look at him and say anybody could have played this. He harnessed it and he had it.
It's like the opposite of Arthur. Arthur is the eccentric character and is mindful of what he is. And with Darius Green, it's he knows not what he does.
Yeah.
But can feign being the eccentric. It's great. Great character, great twist. And Judy the chimpanzee. We do have to mention Judy because she loved to sit on Walt Disney's lap.
The animal actor was spectacular.
Yeah.
By the way, really, really good. All right, let's give our final thoughts here. I'm going to go first because I'm going to be quick. I still don't know exactly what to make of this. There are moments where the comedy is really good. I think the animal actor, like I just said, is great. I think the twist at the end is great. Then I think at times the pacing's good, and there are times where the comedy is unfunny, the characters are not likable, and to me, this movie's kind of just there. You won't find it on Disney Plus. You're going to have to rent it if you so choose. We did for you. You're welcome. It's there. It's not the worst. It's not the best. It's middle of the road, and I'll probably never watch it again.
Well, that's the whole thing, right? Because the twist is exposed. To me, that is what redeemed this whole movie and stopped me from totally panning it. But now that you know, it's like, are you going to dive back to watch these unlikable people and, sort of stumble their way through a plot that feels like, the ball just started rolling down the hill and instead of catching it, they sort of just tried to stop it from crashing, but it was already in motion and there wasn't enough that they could do. There's a lot of good ideas that were set up. It's just that, I think there were too many that were set up and they followed the wrong ones.
Yes.
And it's like, for that, are you going to go back and rewatch it? Because it just feels messy. I mean, I will give you this. I certainly didn't mind watching it the second time, even knowing what was going to happen, because now I knew what to look for. But past that, I don't know that there's that much rewatchability because everything else is just so weak.
Yeah.
But I will say this. It's not the horrendously bad What the February moment that I thought we were getting because of this ending. And I think, knowing what we know now, we have a good contender for our first What the February of next year.
We want to know what you have to say about the Monkey's Uncle. You can join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms, or you can send us an email, monoreelradio@gmail.com. News of the week is coming up, but first a quick break.
News of the Week is proudly sponsored by KMV Travel. KMV Travel is a boutique travel agency that helps families plan personalized vacations and create unforgettable memories in the happiest place on earth. If you've dreamed of visiting Waltz Park or racing with Lightning McQueen in Cars Land, a KMV Travel specialist will work with you to customize the perfect getaway for you and your family. Your KMV Travel advisor will ensure you know the ins and outs of the My Disneyland app, assist with dining reservations, and of course, share their favorite hacks so you can get the most out of your vacation. Visit kmvtravel.com to soar over to California now.
If you're thinking of booking a trip to a Disney destination, you have to contact Jackie Zalezi. My husband and I recently celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary and wanted to go on a trip, just the two of us. Jackie suggested Disneyland, knowing we'd never been and I had been dreaming of going. I am so thankful for her suggestion, as it was the most magical way to celebrate. Jackie got us a fantastic deal, but still constantly checked for discounts to make sure we were guaranteed the lowest price. Having recently visited Disneyland, she was a great source for helpful information and had suggestions for everything, including meals, Max Pass, even places to visit in Los Angeles on our non-park day. Upon arrival at our hotel, we experienced the easiest check-in because Jackie had taken care of everything. Throughout our trip, Jackie was in constant contact, making sure we had everything we needed and answering any questions we had. Our vacation was perfect.
It was announced that Pixar layoffs have begun. 14% of the staff at Pixar has been laid off, so 175 people.
That's rough.
1,300 people are still employed there. A couple of things of note, they haven't said directly who has been laid off. What they did tell us is that none of the top brass lost their jobs. So I look at that and I go, so you guys who make the most money, who made the decisions to put this content into the world, a lot of it half-baked, fired the people who followed their orders. Makes sense.
I mean, I'm looking at this a little bit differently. I mean, of course, you know, I don't want to see anybody lose their jobs, but coming at this from a different angle, I'm looking at this as we're coming off of the writer's strike. There's nothing in the pipeline to put those people to work. That's sort of the boat that I'm in right now, because there's just not enough that they're greenlighting to keep the people employed that are actually making the story. They're paying the creatives to write and develop projects right now. They just don't have the projects to support everyone. What really upsets me about this more than anything else is that, what was it that we put on Disney Plus for free during the pandemic? Oh, that's
Pixar
right.
movies.
It was Pixar movies. Which,
so they were never going to have the box office.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like, what did you think this was going to happen? It's not that they put them on there because they believed in them so much that they were going to strengthen Disney Plus subscribers. It's no, that's what you thought was a good idea to just give away for free. And now we have to answer for that.
Yeah.
And it's just like in such poor taste. You got Inside Out 2 coming out now, and this is what you're going to do?
Yeah, thanks for the box office, Get Out. But something that I think can come of this that is a positive is the fact that they have said that part of this restructure, which to me it's like, yeah, okay, your high-priced executives are still the ones calling the shots, so you didn't really restructure anything. What they did say is that they're putting a focus back on theatrical films, and they are shifting focus away from the streamer. I think that makes sense because you want quality over quantity. I'm also starting to wonder, realistically, how much longer Disney Plus is really going to be a thing. Because now you've got, we're getting into bed with Warner and HBO and Fox and this.
Grasping at straws.
But they're all kind of in the same boat,
yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
I think the only one that's really in good shape right now, the only two perhaps, are Netflix and Peacock, because at least Peacock has WWE. So because WWE Network is gone, that all of that content and the pay-per-views all went to Peacock, which was very smart. Now you're starting to see that, like Caitlin Clark's first WNBA game, where did that stream? On Disney Plus. Mike Tyson is going to have that boxing match for publicity. That's not going to pay-per-view. That's going to Netflix. So I have to wonder, realistically, what the future is. Disney Plus as a singular, or are we just going to see more of these studios meld together? And then basically we're back to where we started with a cable package.
Oh yeah. Oh, the whole thing is just going to implode before it gets better. But it's very interesting what you noted about the ones that you think are safe: Netflix and NBC. NBC Universal, who's about to have a killer freaking year next year.
Yep. So it'll be interesting, but I am happy to see and to hear that in spite of the fact that these layoffs are happening, that they are shifting focus to quality over quantity, which is what it should have been the entire time.
And with all of that being said, do not hurt the people that did work hard on these films.
Yeah.
You should still support Inside Out 2 and Elio whenever we get it in the box office, because what's going to happen is if you go see these films in theaters, it's going to create a budget so that these people can get hired back and they can produce more movies.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you all so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, but there are many ways that you can help support the show. Please give us a rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them. And of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make yours a magical one.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.